Great. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this second session here on stage. Great to see so many new faces, familiar faces, and I'm excited for my topic today and my guests here, why every minister is now a digital minister. And I'd like to welcome Alexandra von Huffelen, Minister for Digitalisation of the Netherlands, and also virtually here, and I also already can see on the screen, Stefan Schnorr, State Secretary at the German Federal Ministry for Digitalisation and Transport. Warm welcome. Stefan, are you in the room, can hear us?
Yes, I can hear you very good, and a very warm welcome from Berlin to Den Haag. I would have preferred to be with you in Den Haag, but unfortunately it was not possible because we have budget negotiations at the moment here in Germany, and therefore it was not possible for me to come to Den Haag, but I'm very happy to be with you in this meeting.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think in the post-COVID world, we get more familiar with this and have the potential to do this discussion.
And we're now hoping, of course, that you're going to get a lot of money for digital stuff, right? That's your challenge for today.
I hope so, Alexandra.
But maybe that's a good start for our conversation. So maybe before we dive into the specifics, let's zoom out a bit. Alexandra, we just talked backstage a bit that you are planning on a new digital agenda. Stefan, the government just released the new digital strategy this summer. So maybe, Alexandra, start with you. Can you tell us a bit about the key elements that you see when you think about digital government?
Yeah. Now, first of all, as a government also in the Netherlands, and I see it basically worldwide, we see that digitalization brings a lot of things that are very good. It can help improve our services, it can help improve healthcare, it can help improve a lot of things, like it's doing communication, for instance, in the normal world. But we also see that there's many ways in which digitalization is also scary or needs to be regulated or has its drawbacks. I mean, we speak about cybersecurity and the risks of that. Disinformation is one of the problems that we see everywhere. We see, of course, that there's data leaks and data leaking, even recently in the Netherlands, also in the government. And we see AI that is basically manipulative. So in order to use what is good about the digital world, the government really needs to step in and make sure that whatever we do is based on values, is based on good regulation, and is based on the idea that digitalization is going to help people and not make their lives miserable or do the things that we actually do not like. So a government needs to do today a lot in order to regulate the digital world and the society in general. And of course, the government itself needs to give an example. And therefore, the program we have as a government is about basically three things. One is that we say it's important that everybody can join in to the digital world. And that means that everybody needs to have the skills and so on and so forth. And for a long time, we were thinking that is, just for people that have a lower education or are not very advanced or elderly. But actually, loads of CEOs also do not know a lot about digital skills. Mm-hmm. And also in the government, there might be lots of people that are highly educated but have still little knowledge. So there we need to work. The second thing, I'll make it short, is that we do believe that everybody should be able to trust the digital world. So loads of things needs to be done to regulate it, to make sure that AI is regulated. We need to fight disinformation. And then, of course, the third thing is that we believe everybody should have control. Mm-hmm. So control over your own data, control over your own way in which these data are being used. And these are the three main points. And of course, we're doing loads of these things in a European context. And there is where Stefan and I meet a lot. Because we're working very closely on, for instance, nowadays, the AI Act or the AIDAS Act, to make sure that we're not doing it on our own, because that doesn't make any sense, but we're doing it together.
I think it's a great chance today to talk about those topics, and maybe we can dive into the broader picture, maybe for the EU as well later on. But Stefan, before we go into those topics, maybe you can give us like an overview what's on top of your digital agenda today and what's like the core pieces and bits of the strategy you've worked on in the summer.
Yeah, thank you very much. And indeed, I fully agree to what Alexandra said. At the current situation, at the end, every minister is a digital minister, because digitalization is a cross-cutting approach, a cross-cutting issue, and therefore all ministers have to think about digitalization. The Minister of Health in the health sector, the Minister of Agriculture in the agriculture sector. When we talk about government, the Minister of Interior. When we talk about economy, the Minister of Economy, and so on. But at the end, we need a digital minister for the overall approach. And this is very important, and this is what Alexandra mentioned before. Because we have a lot of topics that we have to discuss, not only within one ministry, but where we need an overall approach. And this is, for example, the discussion that we have on European level. As mentioned before, the AI Act, the Data Act, I think it is extremely important for the future of our economy, of our society, that we deal correctly with data, that we deal correctly with artificial intelligence. And this is a regulation on European level. We need this regulation on European level because we want to have our single market. This is important for all of us, not only for the citizens, also for the economy. And to build up this single market, we need a common regulation on European level. And this is our task, the task of the unit of Alexandra. This is the task of my ministry. As you mentioned, we started at the new government with building up the digital strategy for the German government, which was decided in August of our government. And now we work together with all ministries to find common solutions in these areas, because it's very important that we have this ground for the regulation and for the topics that we want to address in the future. The European level is extremely important. On the other hand, the international level, we have to work closely together on international level, for example, within the G7 or within the G20. Our last meeting, Alexandra, was in Bali during the G20 meeting, and it's so important that we have a common approach in this area. My ministry is also responsible for building up the digital infrastructure here in Germany. So at the moment, my answer to the main question of this session is yes, we need a digital minister who brings all these issues together, who brings this common approach, and who is sometimes also a driver for other ministries to think more about the possibilities of digitization. Perhaps in some years, if the issue of digitization is in the head of all ministers and of all ministries, perhaps we do not need a special minister for digitization in the future, but this is indeed a discussion for the future, not for now. We need one minister who is responsible for the overall approach.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you already answered my last question, therefore, so thank you so much. I think you touched a few points I find very interesting, which is you need to collaborate across government. You need to convene colleagues together from different ministries, but also on an EU level, on an international level. And my perspective is transparency is a pretty important thing, because you need to, share views, share the things you do with others to make things work. Alexandra, maybe you can share your view on transparency in government. Is that something you need to foster as a digital minister?
Yes, very much. Well, I think transparency in general in a government is super important, because we work for the people and we need to let them know what we are actually doing, how we make our decisions, how we produce, what policies that we are producing, and so on and so forth. But in the digital world, that is extra important, because their transparency or openness means that you have to do much more. You have to work with open data. It has to be very clear what kind of data, for instance, you're collecting of people, and you have to be able to show that to them. We need to work with open source, so that all the software that we're using is open source. We need to be sure, of course, that whenever we use algorithms to make decisions, that these are open as well, so people can see how these algorithms function or how they are being used. So the idea of transparency and openness is even more important in the digital world, because if you do not, and then it becomes a black box. We have had one very bad example in the Netherlands. In my previous job, I had to fix the so-called child benefit care scandal. And that was really horrifying, because basically decision made based on an algorithm ended up to people that got into really, really big financial trouble. So that's not what you want. So you want openness and transparency, not only because it's good always, but especially because you need it in the digital world, and because it's such an international and big world, and you have to open up to everyone in terms of the data, in terms of the programming that you use, the codes, and also in terms of algorithms.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. Maybe a point you took earlier on, which I also find very interesting, because I think today of German ministries especially, so I worked in government myself for a couple of years, and I remember a lot of paper files and a lot of manual procedures. So Stefan, maybe you can give us a glimpse, like what are you doing in terms of digitizing your own ministry, right? Because I think it was in one of our talks earlier, we talked about leading by example, right? And to digitize like your own work. Maybe you can give us a view what your plans are for the future, or what you are actually doing today to do this.
Yes, when we started with the new ministry in December last year, indeed, when I arrived here, I also found a lot of paper on my table. And let me say, the classic flow folder is indeed, I think, a symbol for the administration. Yeah. But I can tell you that now we have November, and since some weeks or some months, we have no longer flow folder in our ministry. We work indeed digitally. So we digitize all the processes in the last months. We are not at the end of this process. It is very complicated, but it's a big chance for all here in our ministry, because the colleagues can work together on one document. It is not longer necessary that you give the document from one table to the other table and you lose time. This is not very efficient. So with the digitization, it is much easier for us to work within the government. It is not so easy for the people to bring them from the old world to the new world. And Alexandra also mentioned this. So we have to take the people on board when we develop new procedures to work better together. And at the beginning, there was a lot of discussion, is this the right way? But now I think more and more the people see that the digitization also can help them during their work. We have a lot of people who work from home, and it's easier now to get the documents via smartphone, via laptop, via tablet, and you can work on these documents wherever you are. You do not need the flow folder. You do not need a big package when you leave the ministry. So it is, from my opinion, very important to bring the colleagues into this process and to discuss with them the best way. And then everything goes faster, and this is also very helpful for us to cooperate with other ministries, because other ministries also working more and more digital, and this makes the administration more efficient in the future. But indeed, trust and transparency is extremely important in this issue, and therefore we have to take a lot of care that our solutions are very transparent and that we have fully trust within the government, but also when we have procedures for citizens or for companies. We need this transparency, especially, and this trust, especially when it comes to state procedures.
Yeah, that sounds very good. I would love to see that, or loved to see that when I worked in government. Yeah. So great to hear that.
Yeah, we're using that as well, but it's not only about, our own paperwork, of course, which is one thing. But the other thing is that now we're going to present this year a registry for algorithms that the government is using, so you can see what kind of algorithms we use. We also have now this app, which we recently promoted and produced, which actually shows you what kind of data as a citizen are being held by different government bodies, so you know what information about you is used and reused within the government. So it's our own work, but it's also that we have to do stuff that is helping other people, of course. And what Stefan is saying is, yeah, that's a bit of the daunting task that we have as digital ministers. We basically need to run a bit ahead of the pack, and usually people are a bit afraid of change and, should this happen? But I think Corona there did a helpful thing, because now people know how easy it is to, do this online, to also work online, share data. But it also very much makes it clear that our citizens want to understand what's actually happening, because although they share a lot of their data with all kinds of private institutions and companies and social media platforms and so on and so forth, when it's about the government, they really want to understand what is happening and see it, and they might be not so, willing to share everything very easily. So therefore also, as Stefan said, this idea of transparency, making very clear what you're doing with data, is of great importance.
And indeed a very challenging task as you do services for everyone, right?
Yeah.
A topic you touched on, Stefan, and maybe you touched on this also briefly, is digital literacy in your ministries, right? So people need to understand, how do I use new systems? How do I get into thinking away from paper files, more into databases and things like that? You've touched that briefly, that this is one of your priorities. Can you maybe give us a small preview of that?
Yeah, the idea is, of course, that within the ministries, we basically need to work and develop courses and help people get further. And also, we have a program where we're looking at new technologies and how we can, embrace them or look at how they can be used. Well, of course, we know loads of things that are happening in the digital world, like the metaverse or whatever. Should we use it? Could we use it? Is it something that we want or not at all? Thinking of those things is of great importance. But it's not only within the government. So there's loads of CEOs that give speeches on stage and say, I do not know anything about, how my computer works. And they're actually boasting that, Mm-hmm. And it's the same guy, it would be impossible if he or she would say, I don't understand anything about finance. But this we find kind of still funny, and it's not, because I believe that both in government, but also in the private sector, and also, of course, collectively, we need to be far more aware of not only all the upsides, all the things that the digital world can bring to us, but also how we can basically, as we spoke about earlier, control this Wild West situation that needs to be controlled far more, as much as we can in an international regulation. Yeah.
But that's good to hear that you both share this view of, you need more skills in the ministries and a better view on how to manage this
definitely.
procedures.
And also, of course, we can invent all kinds of products and services. But so, for instance, about 20% of the people in the Netherlands are not able to use, they do not have enough digital skills, they're not able to use a computer, they cannot read or write enough. So we can develop the greatest products and the nicest apps, but if you then miss out on 20% of the people, you're still doing something very bad.
Yeah, great. Great to hear that, and I think it's the right pathway of bringing more skills and a better understanding of those topics into government. Definitely something we as public work on as well. Maybe before we come to an announcement of yours, we do a very brief question, a quick question to both of you. If you looked into the future, like 5 or maybe even 10 years from now, will there still be a digital minister in your country? Stefan, you touched briefly on that, but maybe you can also elaborate on that again.
Indeed, I give the answer before, but please allow me to add one more, from my point, a very, very important thing. It makes no sense, and this was a little bit the mistake that we did in the past. It makes no sense to switch analog processes into digital processes. And this is not comfortable for the people. This is not user-friendly. So what we have to do is to redesign the procedures and to think about the end and what is the best way to reach this end, not only to copy the current situation, but we have to build a new design for the procedures. And that means not only to build up new digital procedures, but also to change a lot of other things in the collaboration in our ministries. And this is also a very important task for us. I built up an own unit in my ministry for the change management, to take the people on board and to find common solutions. We work together with experts, we work together with companies to bring fresh ideas also in our thinking. And I think this task is necessary not only for my ministry, but this task is necessary for all the ministries and for our whole government, not only on federal level, but also on state level and on municipal level. And this is indeed, from my point of view, also the task of the digital minister to bring these processes forward. And therefore, as I mentioned before, yes, we need a digital minister at the moment, but it is my wish that perhaps in 10 years we have no more a special digital minister, as we have not at the moment an analog minister, so that all the ministers work together and for a common goal to use the digitization in all sectors. And this is automatically use the digitization, and not only to think about how can we use it, it must be the basis for our work in the future.
So it becomes like the natural operating model in every ministry. Great. Alexandra, what do you think?
I was actually hoping that we would both be in office still, you know. I enjoy working together. So, no, but I do believe, though, I think this is going to stay. It's like we also have a Minister of Finance. It's not that nobody thinks about budgets. Every minister does, but still we have a Minister of Finance who is looking over the budget in general and so on and so forth. And I think the digital world will be there because, you know, these basic things that the digital minister needs to work on, the things that I described, which is make sure that everybody can join in, make sure that there is trust in the system, which is very important also with citizens, and make sure that people have control. For instance, you know, by creating a wallet, and something that we are working on very, very diligently right now. But it's all very important. So I do believe that we need it for the coming time. Because, yes, there's always, as Stefan is also saying, there's loads of people that want to move ahead. There's also people that find it challenging. You know, there's all these processes that we need to work together. Because, no, we have, you know, if you want to get something done from the Dutch government as a person, you need to go to so many different places right now, whether it's online or offline. We need to combine that, make the processes easier, make sure that it's more, you know, one-stop shop. All these things before we're there, I think we need far more than 5 years.
So you need someone that is convening and driving
and
this.
And always somebody who's still driving that, and also make sure that it's transparent. Because, as I said, there's loads of things that we can do to optimize. There's a lot that we need to do to make sure that people are going to trust the digital government. And we need to make sure that people can, you know, have control and feel that they can use it in the right way. So yeah, definitely we're going to be there for quite some time.
Okay, cool. I'm curious of time, but we've touched on the topic of transparency, and you actually have an announcement to make. So in the digital world, also failure is an important thing, right? Always promoted by a lot of tech companies as well, and I think a lot of founders can relate to that. Yeah, you fail probably more often than you win.
Which is happening in innovation, right? And there's the innovation that next year. But it starts this year. There will be again a public failure award. This doesn't sound really nice, but it's actually meant as very nice, because failures are there, needed to be shared, basically, to make sure that nobody makes the same mistake twice. And this award is going to be there for next year also. So it's going to be very interesting to see next time when we are meeting again, hopefully. That we can see who won the award. Not so much to say, oh, this went wrong, but more like, okay, what did you learn, and how can we learn from you, in order to make sure that we're not going to make all the mistakes, all the time.
I love that. I think that's a great initiative, and a great way of showing that, you know, there's no master plan you can follow. A lot of things are changing, a lot of things are moving, and you need to trial and test to find the best ways. So with that said, thank you both so much for joining us, Stefan from Berlin and Alexandra here on stage. Thank you so much in the room for being here. And with that, I will hand over to my colleague Chiara again for some more announcements and the next panels. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Stefan. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a nice evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.